والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التمسك بكتاب الله تعالى وسنة رسوله صلى الله عليه وسلم والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. Alhamdulillah. At the end of last lesson, we looked into three different issues: the permissibility of following any of the four schools, following dispensations, and talfiq. So we mentioned that there's a consensus that one can follow any of the four schools: the Hanafi school, the Shafi'i school, the Maliki school, or the Hanbali school. And if one does so, then one's worship is sound. If you follow any one of the four schools, your worship is sound. We then mentioned about following dispensations. So for example, someone looks for the easiest opinion in each madhab. They say, I'm going to take the easy opinion from the Hanafi madhab, and the Shafi'i madhab, and the Maliki madhab, and the Hanbali madhab. Imam al-Nawawi, in his Fatawa, he says it's impermissible to take the easiest opinion in every school. One is looking for a way out, because the deen came to purify us and to help us worship Allah Ta'ala as He wants Himself to be worshipped. And if one is merely looking for the easy way out, then one is not doing that. We then mentioned talfiq, and I just want to offer some clarification because that was a very good question that was mentioned last week. So we say that you can follow any one of the four schools, but that doesn't mean you can pick and choose between different schools indiscriminately. So the reason being is because when we say you can follow any one of the four schools, we're referring to that you have to follow that school in that given act of worship, such your worship is valid and sound in that school. So we gave a very simple example. We said that, for example, so talfiq is piecing together different opinions from different schools, and then what you're left with is an act of worship that no school said was sound. Okay, the example we gave was someone wants to make wudu in accordance with the Shafi'i madhab. Okay, and with the Shafi'is, it's permissible to touch just a part of your hair, a part of one hair. That suffices with the Shafi'i school. So when you're making wudu with the Shafi'is, you can touch a part of your head, part of one hair, and that suffices for wiping the head with the Shafi'is. Now in the Hanafi school, you have to wipe at least a quarter of the head. Okay, so someone says, I'm going to make wudu with the Shafi'is. But then in prayer they say, I'm going to pray like a Hanafi and not read the Fatiha, because the Fatiha is not obligatory with the Hanafis. So this person has made wudu in accordance to the Shafi'i madhab. They've touched a part of their hair. Now in prayer, they're praying like a Hanafi and they don't read the Fatiha. Now no Imam said worship in that order, piecing together that worship like that was sound. And that leads to one's worship being invalid, because the Hanafis didn't say you can pray like that with your wudu and your prayer not reading Fatiha. Neither did the Shafi'is. So if one pieces together, it's called talfiq, they piece together different opinions, they're going to be left with an act of worship that no Imam said was valid, and that's why talfiq is impermissible. Another example we gave is someone, for example, so with the Malikis, in the Maliki school, dogs are pure. Dogs are pure like other animals. With the Shafi'is and other scholars, dogs are impure. Okay, so for example, the example the scholars give, if a dog, the saliva or anything wet, any moisture that comes from a dog is impure. If it comes into contact with something, you have to wash that thing 7 times with pure water and once with pure earth. So dogs are impure with the Shafi'is and other scholars. But with the Malikis, they're pure. Okay, so someone gets some moisture from a dog on them, okay, on their clothing. Their clothing has become contaminated by a dog, right? Urine or saliva, for example. Now, this person made wudu in accordance to the Shafi'i madhab. Okay, so their wudu is sound with the Shafi'is. So in the chapter of purification, they're following the Shafi'i school. They have wudu with the Shafi'is, right? And they clean their clothes in accordance to the Shafi'i school. Now all of a sudden, this person says, I'm now going to follow the Maliki opinion because dogs are pure. Dogs are pure with the Malikis. However, in the Maliki school, when you're making wudu, you have to rub your limbs. So your face, make sure you have to rub every part of the limb that's obligatory to wash with the Malikis. So-and-so makes wudu with the Shafi'is, right? He has wudu in the Shafi'i madhab, but then he wants to become a Maliki just because a dog licked him. But we say you can't do that because you don't have wudu in accordance to the Maliki madhab. So talfiq is impermissible. Why? Because someone pieces together different opinions and they're left with the act of worship that no Imam said was sound. Of course, please.
Yeah. So basically, what you're saying is there's a contradiction in every madhab with regards to certain things. For example, one madhab says you can recite Surah Fatiha, it's must, and then Hanafi says you don't recite Fatiha. One madhab is saying the dog is pure, and the other madhab is saying it's not pure. So isn't there contradiction in all of these madhabs when we are following? I mean, so what are we left with? I mean, so a dog is impure because we have a hadith, right? That if a dog licks you, you have to wipe over it or clean it 7 times.
Yes.
And there's also hadith, La salah biman lam fatihat al-kitab.
Naam.
I'm correct.
Yes.
So there's no
sound hadith,
without without Surah Fatiha. So
can I interject? There's like 3 good questions there. If there's a 4th, I can carry on. So the first one was, it's not a contradiction. There's a hadith. Sorry?
It's a contradiction.
That's your understanding. Let me finish the point. So there's a hadith in Sahih Bukhari, which talks about the affair of the mujtahid. So the mujtahid is the one who's reached a level of knowledge. He can now derive rulings from the Quran and the Sunnah. Okay, so we say Imam Abu Hanifa, Shafi'i, Malik, and Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal, they were all mujtahids. They established their own principles, and then those who serve their school, their students, derive rulings from those principles. Okay, the hadith in Sahih Bukhari mentions that if the mujtahid gives a ruling, okay, and he's correct, he has 2 rewards with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, so for example, let's say, for the sake of argument, or for the sake of making the point, let's say the Hanafis were wrong in a certain issue, or the Shafi'is, or the Malikis, or the Hanbalis. So we say the Malikis were wrong in a certain issue, for example, right, and the Hanbalis or the Hanafis were right. Okay, in that issue, the scholar who was correct has 2 rewards with Allah Ta'ala. The hadith in Sahih Bukhari mentions. If he's incorrect, he has 1 reward. Okay, he has 1 reward. So when we say contradiction, that word necessitates there's a mistake with one of the imams such they're wrong for doing so. Okay, but we don't say they're sinful or it's a blameworthy mistake, because the hadith says even if they make a mistake, they have a reward. The hadith, for example, the sound hadith, likewise, when the Prophet ﷺ said he said to the companions, don't reach such and such a place. Sorry, don't pray Asr until you reach such and such a place. Okay, he said to the companions, go to this place, and don't pray Asr until you get there. Don't pray Asr until you get there. Now, on the way, the Asr time is about to come to an end, or it's close to come to an end. So the companions, they say, we need to pray. Asr's going to finish, we need to pray, right? Another group say, no. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't pray until you get there, right? So we have 2 groups. One, stop and pray. They pray Asr. The other group go to their location, their destination. They don't pray until they get there and Asr's finished. Okay? When the companions return, they tell the Prophet ﷺ what happened, and he left it at that. He didn't say one group was right, one group was wrong. So there can be more than one sound opinion. You can follow more than one opinion, and the proof of that is in both hadiths, that we don't say it's a contradiction. We say that one imam made an effort, so did the other, and they both have rewards, and the one that was correct has 2 rewards, the one that was incorrect has 1 reward. The next thing you mentioned was the hadith of the dogs, for example, right? So as you mentioned, the hadith that mentions that if a dog licks in a bucket, for example, or its saliva goes into a bucket, you have to purify that bucket by washing it 7 times with pure water and once with pure earth. Okay, now the Shafi'is understood that to be an obligation, such that the bucket isn't pure until you fulfill the 7 washes once with pure earth. But the Malikis understood that's what's recommended and best to do, not an obligation. right? So for example, you have, there's something called an imperative command, okay? In the science of usul al-fiqh, we have an imperative. So there's a hadith in Sahih Muslim which the Prophet ﷺ says, كنت نهيتكم عن زيارة القبور, right? Previously I prohibited you from visiting graves, right? Because he was, in the early days of Islam, in the Jahili Arabs, they would do things that were impermissible with the graves. So in the early days of Islam, it was haram to visit graves. In the same hadith here, he says, Al-an fazuruha. Now, I'm telling you to go and visit them. Right? The hadith in Sahih Muslim. Now, zuruha is an imperative command. It's an order, okay? Go and visit them. Now, if you take that on its apparent meaning, it means it's obligatory to visit graves. Now, the ulama understood that it's not obligatory, it's recommended. You want to visit graves, make dua for the dead, as long as you don't do anything haram there, of course. But it's recommended to visit graves. There's another hadith in Sahih Muslim in which the Prophet ﷺ makes the dua he used to make for those at the graveyard. The point being is that zuruha is an imperative command. Apparently it means it's obligatory, but we understand that to mean it's recommended. The hadith you mentioned, لا صلاة لمن لم يقرأ بفاتحة الكتاب. Right? So the Shafi'is understood that is that you have to read Fatiha, and if you don't, you have no prayer. Okay? But the Hanafi school understood that is that for the completion of your prayer and the perfection of it, then you read the Fatiha. Allah Ta'ala says in Surah Al-Muzammil, فَقَرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنْهُ. Okay? The Hanafis understood that is that, and you want to check with the Hanafi scholars, of course, because I'm not Hanafi, but it suffices to read a small portion. So they said 3 ayahs is suffices. So the point I'm trying to make is that a hadith there may be something apparent from the hadith, that it may be an obligation. It seems like an obligation, or you have to do so, but that can be understood that that's for the perfection and the completion of that given action, but not an obligation. Does that answer the question? Inshallah.
I mean, what stops you from following a ruling from a certain madhab? For example, if I'm following Hanafi and then I go and take a ruling from Shafi'i, nothing stops me. I mean, if they're both correct.
Yeah,
if one is saying dog is impure, the other one is saying dog is pure, and then I sometimes follow that, so doesn't that create a problem by itself? Yeah, no. So
there's a consensus that you can follow any one of the four schools. Okay, but the conditions that ulama stipulate is that your worship is sound in that given school. Because if you piece things together, you're going to have an act of worship that no scholar said was sound. The example we gave, someone wipes their head with the Shafi'is, they don't refer to their in prayer. The Hanafi said that didn't say that's correct, neither did the Shafi'is. So that.
There's an ayat on Quran on how to wipe your hands over your thing.
Yeah, so.
That's obligatory. So
yeah, again, so the ba, right, the فَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, right? Now the ba, the reason the scholars differ is because of that little ba. Right, that ba, as Abdul Qahir, we mentioned in our last, Abdul Qahir al-Jurjani, the great Shafi'i scholar, and the grammarian. What did we mention?
It means of the gift.
Excellent. So we had that small ba, as the uncle mentioned, can have 8 meanings. Okay, so the Shafi'is understood that to be a small bit suffices. Right? The Hanafis understood that it has to be a quarter of the head. The Malikis understood that it has to be the whole head. Right? So my point being is that there are different ways to understand. There are some ayahs that you can't differ in. Right? The prayer is obligatory. Is anyone going to dispute that? Right? So that's apparent. There's no different opinion there. But some ayahs, they can be interpreted in different ways. And the wiping the head's a good example. Depending on how you understand the bat will depend on the ruling. MashaAllah. Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Just to add to this issue, and I think it's just now that we are making those schools to be kind of exclusive. But if I'm not mistaken, almost all the imams, either in their preface or their conclusion, stated that these are their opinions. And if that there is something that comes genuinely a sound hadith, that is their own opinions. So if it's based, the interpretation mostly is based on their understanding and their opinions. And now we are lucky, education and knowledge has become very vast. For them, they have to follow a meticulous way to authenticate.
Have to follow what? Sorry, I missed that
they
last
have
word.
to follow a strict sequence in trying to find out the authenticity of hadith or whatever. But now the hadith are so Imam Muslim, Bukhari, everywhere, they are everywhere in the homes. So they have limited access to some of those informations, but now there are. So if a particular school, he's not perfect, he might make a mistake based on his opinion. Yes, he has his reward, but that doesn't make that you follow that exclusively, so long as there is a pure and confirmed.
Let me interject because you're going to mention too many questions. That's a very good point. So the first thing you mentioned about either صح الحديث فهو مذهبي, right? So that's what Shafi'i said. If there's a sound hadith that comes, then that is my madhab. Now, what's important to understand is who was he saying that to? Was he saying that to the butchers and to the bus drivers and to the farmers? He was saying that to, scholars, students of knowledge who were very advanced. Okay, so the idea we can take something what Shafi'i said or what Imam said and say that because of this, therefore this. Right? When we say there are sound hadiths that you don't act upon. Right? There are sound hadiths you don't act upon. We mentioned in the first lesson that one of the great Maliki students said, if it wasn't for Malik and Layth, I would be lost because I thought you had to act upon every hadith. That's the first thing. Shafi'i said something, who was he speaking to? He was speaking to students of knowledge who knew what it meant if they saw a sound hadith, how to act upon that or not to act upon it, or act upon it in accordance with other hadiths and so on and so forth, right? The second thing you mentioned was a very good point, was you mentioned that the imams can make a mistake. Of course they can. They're human beings, and we're human beings. We never say that imams were ma'soom. Only prophets were infallible. Only prophets couldn't make mistakes, right? There's no disagreement that we don't say that imams are ma'soom, of course not. However, who's more likely to make a mistake? Them or us? Us. If I want to get a medical opinion, I don't, go and study medicine. I go and ask a professional, a specialist in that field. One thing that's important to remember is that when we say the Shafi'i school, the Maliki school, the Hanafi school, the Hanbali school, Imam Shafi'i was one person, okay? Now, when we say we follow the Shafi'i school, we're not saying we're following Shafi'i as an individual. We follow the Shafi'i school and hundreds of thousands of scholars who have come after him. Imam Nawawi, Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, Imam Suyuti and other great scholars. So the idea was, maybe Shafi'i was wrong. Yeah, but what you're saying is, it's his school. So there are sound hadiths now that, there are hadiths that other scholars have looked at in accordance to, the point being is that the schools have been developed over time. It's not like Shafi'i said something and then it stopped there. You with me? And it didn't stop there. Does that answer your question? Or does that address the issue rather?
People are not doing that though. People
What?
are following blindly. For example, they're just doing taqleed. They say, Imam Abu Hanifa said this, so I'm following that and I'm not going to divert from this opinion. And that's that, even if that's correct or
so thing is, taqleed, right? Taqleed is, firstly, taqleed in aqidah is, some scholars will say it's impermissible. Okay, so in aqidah, right, you have to have certainty that Allah exists, and you have to know why, right? So one can't make taqleed in aqidah. However, in fiqh, because what we're saying is, if we say we can't do taqleed, that necessitates that everyone has to go and become a scholar and study so they can derive rulings from the hadith, Quran and Sunnah. The idea the layman, like myself or others, can just pick up a hadith and say, the Prophet says this. Taqleed is obligatory upon individuals who don't have that level of knowledge. It's obligatory for them to do taqleed, because how else are they going to worship Allah Ta'ala? They're going to guess? They're going to go to the hadith and the Quran by themselves?
So are you saying that somebody who follows Hanafi book of thoughts, he will follow that book of thoughts no matter what? If it's a strong hadith, he leaves that, he just follow what Hanafi, like that's what you said from the beginning. You said
Yeah, the thing is, I'm saying that it's
can't
not.
speak
Yeah,
the truth.
firstly,
For example,
it's not him.
What the Salaf did was, the Salaf, whenever they saw or found a hadith or saw Rasulullah ﷺ doing something, they would follow it and they would implement that in their lives. So hence they were called the Salafs.
Okay, so there's two hadiths, right? There's a hadith that says touching the private area breaks your wudu, right? There's a hadith that says it doesn't. Which one do you follow? Do you choose?
But there's more. There's more elaboration to that.
Exactly. That's my point. Let me make the point. So the scholars understood that, in the Shafi'i school understood that means there are two hadiths, right? Then we have nasikh and mansukh. We have that which abrogates and that which is abrogated. So the touching of the private area, right, with one's palm of their hand, breaks with the Shafi'i school because the hadith that mentioned that abrogated the one that preceded it. The idea the layman can say, pick up a hadith, and things the Salaf would not go straight to hadith. That's not correct. That's not correct. They would, the companions asked other companions for opinions. Okay, the companions differed. We mentioned this in our first. Their companions differed on certain opinions. Right? Imam Sha'bi said there were 6 companions who gave fatwa. Right? Out of those 6, 3 would abandon their own opinion for the opinion of the other. It's not upon the layman, myself, yourself, brothers who haven't studied to any high level to go to the Quran and Sunnah and say, yeah, akhi, the hadith is this, therefore I say this. That's not the practice and that's impermissible. You can't, I can't, we can't do that. We don't have that level of knowledge. What other option is there?
Basically, it throws the hadith of Bukhari and all these other, like, you know, the great did so much research, they traveled months and years after just one hadith.
Okay, yeah.
Just to find out one hadith months. That obviously takes everything to the question then, is it?
How?
Because if we are following one book or one school of thought, then that is.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Where did Shafi'i get his ruling from? Himself or the hadith?
The hadith.
Okay, so you just huh?
He traveled. He did
Yeah.
research.
So okay. Well,
Unlike the other ulamas, for example, Imam Hanifa, he was in Iraq, right? If I know correctly, and he was a businessman. He didn't travel that much, and he said himself that if I'm incorrect in some hadith, there are possibilities. Then please.
Okay, who decides he's incorrect?
Based on the facts, I mean, what
Okay, so do you have that level?
You gather all the information, all the hadith.
So do you have that level of knowledge?
No, I don't. But
So,
we
okay.
are blessed with that knowledge now. Imam.
Okay, so but if you don't have that, how can we expect the layman to do that? Who in this room has that level of knowledge?
No, we have books from Bukhari. We have books from Bukhari.
Okay,
Clearly they
yeah.
are like the
So can you speak Arabic?
No.
Okay, so when you open up a hadith on the internet, how do you know it's translated correctly? Okay, so you're in need of scholarship because you don't know Arabic, right? Even if you know Arabic, we said that it may be you've misunderstood the hadith. It may be you haven't understood the context of the hadith. You know, we mentioned that, you know, if I said the hadith in Sahih Muslim, zuruha, if you read that hadith, right, the hadith of visiting graves, you would say, because it's apparent, that it's obligatory to visit graves. Correct? Okay, so no scholar said that. So that necessitates that you're making a mistake because no scholar said it's obligatory. That's one small example. It's not for the layman to go to the book, the Quran and Sunnah. That is for the scholars.
I mean, visiting a grave is not a fara'id, is it? I mean,
No, you're missing the point.
Praying,
Yeah, you're missing the point. The point I'm making. Lahza, give me a sec. The point I'm making. If you go to the hadith, you're going to make a mistake. I would make a mistake. So and so would make a mistake.
Because I know, because visiting a grave is not a farad.
But the hadith says zuruha. It's if you know Arabic, you'd know that's a command, obligatory. Aqim as-salah, right? Establish the prayer. Is the prayer obligatory?
Yeah.
But hold on a minute, you just said there's two hadith, right? One's imperative, the other's comparative. They both say establish the prayer, visit the graves. The apparent meaning is they're both obligatory. So how do you choose which one's not obligatory?
We go to the hadith, obviously, right?
But that okay, I gave you an ayah.
Like you said, we are not obviously in a position to interpret ayat of Quran.
Yeah, we're going around in circles. We're going around in circles, right? There is a consensus you can follow the 4 schools. Taqleed is obligatory. The layman can't go to the hadith, and this is the way of our scholastic tradition. And inshallah, let's carry on with the lesson. I'm happy to continue after, but inshallah, and if you listen to the first 4 lessons, I think a lot of your questions will be clarified, because we did touch on a lot of those issues. Now, so we mentioned. Alhamdulillah, we've recapped the last lesson, which took a while because we had some good questions. Allah yabarak feekum, mashallah.
He is new because the first time he's coming here. Because he doesn't know about few lessons.
Alhamdulillah.
He
No question.
all weeks he knows.
Alhamdulillah. No, questions are very good. It's very good to ask. Very good to ask questions.
No, the young one.
The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith narrated by Imam al-Tabarani and Imam Bayhaqi, طلب العلم فريضة على كل Muslim. Right? MashaAllah. Seeking knowledge is obligatory upon every single individual. We have to seek knowledge. What kind of knowledge? The knowledge that allows you to worship Allah Ta'ala and know about Him what is befitting, or to say about Him what is befitting to say about Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to seek knowledge, you have to know how to pray, pay your zakat, hajj, so on and so forth. There's another hadith that we mentioned in our first lesson, من سلك طريقا يلتمس فيه علما سلك الله بطريق إلى الجنة. So the one who traverses a path of knowledge, Allah will make easy for him the path to paradise. We've now started the text of Imam al-Habashi rahimahullah ta'ala, and these are two hadiths he mentioned in the beginning of his book. He then mentions that the work he has put together is an abridged from many books of Imam al-Ghazali. Imam al-Ghazali, Muhammad, the son of Muhammad, Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. He was from Tus, which is Naysabur. Who knows where Naysabur is? Where is it in the modern day? Any guesses? If we can't know where Naysabur is, mashallah, how are we going to go to the Quran and Sunnah if we don't know where these? Naam. Naysabur is northeast Iran. Northeast Iran. Huh? Yeah, mashallah. I should have pronounced it properly. That's how they would, if you see in the books of the scholars, and Naysabur, that's how they would, so and so, and Naysaburi. So Imam Muslim, likewise, and Naysabur was from Naysabur, and Naysabur. And we have, so Tus was slightly east of Naysabur. Tus. Imam al-Ghazali was from Tus. Imam al-Ghazali was known as Hujjat al-Islam, the proof of Islam. Hujjat al-Islam. Hujjat al-Islam. He was, so there's a hadith narrated, there's a hadith that says that Allah Ta'ala sends every 100 years a mujaddid, okay, to renew the faith. The mujaddid of the first century, was Umar bin Abdul Aziz. Umar bin Abdul Aziz. He was the sixth rightly guided caliph, Khalifa. Who was the first? Second? Third? Fourth? Radiallahu anhum ajma'een. Who was the fifth? No. No, who was the fifth?
The fifth was Osmania? No, only four.
Only four? MashaAllah.
Hassan, I think, did a part of the 30 years.
MashaAllah. Ahsant, barakallahu feek. Hassan bin Ali. For 6 months after his father, he was the Khalifa. And there's a hadith that mentions the rightly guided caliphates will be in my ummah for 30 years. And if you add up the Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, and the 6 months of Hassan bin Ali, it amounts to 30 years. So Umar bin Abdul Aziz was the Khalifa of the first century. The second, Muhammad bin Idris al-Shafi'i, Mujaddid of the second century, Imam al-Shafi'i. The Mujaddid of the third century was Ibn Surayj al-Shafi'i or Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari. Naam. The Mujaddid of the fourth century was the great Maliki scholar Abu Bakr al-Baqillani, and some say Abu Hamid al-Isfaraini al-Shafi'i. The Mujaddid of the 5th century, by consensus, Imam al-Suyuti said, لا أعلم في ذلك خلافا. I don't know a difference of opinion that Imam al-Ghazali was the mujaddid of the 5th century, rahimahullahu ta'ala. Imam al-Ghazali, some people say he wasn't a faqih, like he wasn't strong in jurisprudence. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Imam al-Ghazali wrote authoritative works across in all sciences. But in the science of fiqh, he was a Shafi'i scholar. He wrote from them al-Basit, al-Wajiz, al-Muhit, right? 3 authoritative works in the Shafi'i school. Imam al-Rafi'i abridged the smallest one of those. Imam al-Rafi'i, Shafi'i scholar. Imam Nawawi abridged al-Muharrar, which was Rafi'i's work, into Manhaj. Manhaj is the final say, if you like, in the Shafi'i school. And if you trace that back, where does it go to? Ghazali. And then people say Ghazali wasn't a faqih. Ajib. Ghazali was arguably one of the greatest school of scholars, if not the greatest school of scholar that ever walked the face of the earth. It's important that we have good adab and etiquette with the great ulama that served this deen. And people now, they'll, it's a bid'ah sayyah, right? It's a blameworthy innovation to speak ill of people like Ghazali. No one disagreed he was the mujaddid of the 5th century, and now people say, oh, maybe he was, it's not becoming of the Muslim to do so. Okay, so we're going to have to move pretty quickly because we had a very active question-filled lesson, mashallah. The focus of today's lesson, which we're going to have to cover, inshallah, in 10 minutes, was the pillars of Islam. The pillars of Islam are 5, as you all know. Praying, saying the shahada, praying, fasting, hajj, and Ramadan. Prayer is not something exclusive to this ummah. The other communities before us likewise prayed. Allah Ta'ala says on the tongue of Isa alayhi salam, وَأَوْصَانِي بِالصَّلَاةِ وَالزَّكَاةِ مَا دُمْتُ حَيًّا. My Lord ordered me or told me, asked me rather, to pray and to give zakat for as long as I lived. The Prophet ﷺ, before his, so he received prophecy. How old was he when he received prophecy ﷺ? 40, excellent, ahsant. 40 years old. He was 40 years old, and in the early days of his prophecy, they would pray 2 units of prayer, one in the evening and 2 units in the evening, 2 units in the morning. Some of the scholars understood the ayah وَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ بِالْعَشِيِّ وَالْإِبْكَارِ, right? That was the proof that he used to pray 2 units of prayer in the morning and in the evenings. And then with the Isra and Mi'raj, when he ascended to the heavens, the 5 prayers was made obligatory. And the Isra and Mi'raj was in this blessed month. That's the opinion of Nawawi and other great scholars. And there is khilaf, because khilaf is a part of our tradition. Nah. Some scholars say it's in Al-Rabi' al-Awwal, some say Ramadan, but Nawawi and others say it's in this blessed month, the 27th of Rajab. Another example of khilaf, and I think we mentioned previously, is Aisha said famously that the Prophet ﷺ did not see his Lord during the Isra and Mi'raj, right? But other companions said, no, he did. And that's the opinion the scholars went with. So the companions themselves differed on such a major issue. And that was, it was perfectly acceptable for them to differ on those issues. The second pillar is just one. So there's a hadith narrated by Imam Muslim on the authority of Jabir bin Abdullah, in which the Prophet ﷺ said, مثل صلاة الخمس كمثل نهر جار غمر على باب أحدكم يغتسل منه كل يوم 5 مرات. So the 5 prayers are like a river, plentiful in water, flowing past one's home, that they wash from 5 times a day. So the prayer is a purification, physically when you wash for prayer, but spiritually. But imagine if you washed yourself. Imagine 5 showers a day, mashallah. Would you ever smell? No. Would there ever be anything unclean on your body? No. And that's the outward, of course. But the hadith is referring to the inward state of the Muslim who prays 5 times a day. That it cleans him, it purifies him from from bad actions or from sins. And the prayer is not just a formality that we should do throughout the day. Prayer is an experience. It's an experience. It should change one's state.
It's the ascension of the mu'min, they say, right?
Sorry?
It's the ascension.
Yeah, the ascension, the sharaf, the honor. Some scholars will say, some of the pious would say, right? So the prayer is an experience. Like when you leave, like you watch a film or you leave like a sporting event or something. There's a kind of there's a buzz, that you feel. We all experience. So how is it then who one has left the presence of their Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala? What should they be feeling? What should their state be like? The pious would say, right? So it's recommended to pray in the depths of the night. Okay, the depths of the night. Akhir al-layl. The last portion of the night. And there's something special in that part of the night. And some scholars would say, the pious would say, if the kings of Rome knew what we experienced in the depths of the night, in the sweetness we experienced in worship, they would fight us with it. They would fight us over it with their swords. The tranquility, the peace, the proximity a Muslim feels in that part of the night is more superior and better than anything in the dunya. The pious would say that if the kings knew what we had in that part of the night, they would go to war with us, fighting us for that experience. Zakat is the third pillar of Islam. The word zakat, yazku in Arabic. Zakat, yazku. Huh? Exactly, ahsan, perfect, very good. To clean, to increase, to be pure. And that's why we mentioned the ayah a few times. لَقَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. Successful is the one who purifies the self. يُزَكِّيكُم in the Quran we hear, to purify. Now the word zakat, yazku, is intransitive. Means it doesn't need an object. So if I said I stood up, I don't need an object. If I said I ate, I have to eat something, right? So the word zakah is intransitive, the verb, to be pure. The word zakah becomes transitive, to purify. The point being is that zakah yazku, to be pure, and zakah, to purify. Okay, so zakkaha, purifying yourself. Yuzakkikum, the Prophet ﷺ, to purify the believers. And then
physical purification or just the purification of the soul? What does it mean?
So I mean there are other hadiths, the hadith in Sahih Bukhari about purifying the heart. If there's a part of the body, if it's pure, the whole body is pure. And we wouldn't say that was the physical heart, because if that was the case, exercise and eating healthy would be enough to purify yourself. But obviously no one understands it like that. So there is definitely of course, a spiritual purification, yeah, spiritual purification. So technically, zakat is giving a portion of one's wealth to those in need with a specific intention. Now, often scholars in their books, they would mention the linguistic meaning of something, then the technical meaning, and there's a relationship between the two. So we have zakah yazku, to increase, to be pure, right? The linguistic meaning. Then we have the technical meaning, which is giving a portion of one's wealth with a specific intention to those who are who can receive that zakat, the poor and the unfortunate and like. So the linguistic and the technical. If we look at these two meanings together, is zakat increases and purifies one's wealth. Okay, so to give your wealth is to purify that part of your wealth, because that part of your wealth doesn't belong to you, it belongs to the poor. And if you keep that, your wealth is impure. And it increases your wealth, obviously not literally, because, well, maybe in the long term, but if you give £1,000 in zakat, for example, it looks like you've lost out on £1,000, but you're blessing your wealth, and the hope is Allah Ta'ala bless you in the future and increase you in wealth. Zakat was made obligatory in the second year of the hijrah, after the hijrah, before Ramadan. Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا. So take a portion of their wealth Okay, take a portion of their wealth that will purify them. So giving your wealth, as we said, is a means of purification, purifying your wealth, and asking Allah Ta'ala to bless you, allowing Allah Ta'ala bless you in your wealth. The next, the last pillar is, or the fourth rather, is fasting in Ramadan. So fasting linguistically means to abstain from something. إني نذرت للرحمن صوما. In Surah Maryam, إني نذرت للرحمن صوما. I make a vow to silence. Maryam said, a vow to be silent, not to speak. So that's linguistic meaning of Sawm. Sama yusumu is to abstain from something. Now the technical meaning is abstaining from food and anything that breaks the fast from the morning to the evening in Ramadan, from Fajr, before Fajr to after Maghrib. And it was likewise made legislated in the second year of the Hijrah after Zakat. And with every one of the pillars there is an outward dimension, of course, and there is an inward. So we mentioned the prayer is something you do, but it's a state that should change your state. You should be in a state of peace and tranquility. Saying the shahada is one thing, believing it is another. The munafiqeen said the shahada. They prayed in the first word with Rasulullah. That didn't suffice. They needed to believe. They should have believed inwardly. Zakat is something you do with your wealth. Okay, you give with your wealth, but it should affect the state of the believer. Being generous is a means of purifying oneself. So the scholars would say, this is a different point, but if you don't like someone, right, so and so, just don't like him, for whatever reason. If you don't like someone, okay, the scholars will say the cure for this is to pray for them and ask Allah to increase them. So you're jealous of so and so's nice car, or the knowledge he has, or for whatever reason you're jealous of so and so. If you want to purify yourself, you should pray for him. In your sujood, pray for that person. Ask Allah to increase them, to bless them, because you're fighting against the shaitan, because you don't hate him. It's the shaitan that's causing you, and the sickness of self causing you to dislike that person. In Surah Yusuf, Allah Ta'ala speaks about he attributed the animosity between the brothers not to the brothers but to the shaitan. So the point being is zakat is a means of giving. Okay, you give your wealth. Why? To purify your wealth and to be generous. If greed is a sickness of the heart, a sickness of the self, and a way to rectify that is by giving in your wealth. What's obligatory and what is likewise recommended, giving sadaqah. Fasting has an outward dimension, abstaining from food, from water, from drink. But there's obviously more depth to the fast. In the hadith that's mentioned that there are 5 things that break the fast. One of the things that's mentioned is looking with desire. Okay, looking with desire. MashaAllah, if we took that on its apparent meaning, if someone looked in Ramadan at a woman with desire, did that mean they'd have to do qada? No. Some scholars said they would, but the majority opinion is that it nullifies the perfection of one's fasting, not the actual fast in and of itself. Because if that was the case, people would be doing qada, mashallah, all of the time. There's a hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ mentions that the shaitan flows through the blood of the son of Adam like as does the blood. Okay, the shaitan flows through the veins of the sons of Adam as does the blood. And fasting, the hadith mentions, is a means of restricting or basically fighting against the devil, because when one is hungry, when one is weak, there's less energy to do bad things. So likewise, fasting has an outward dimension and an inward. You should fast outwardly, but you should likewise purify yourself and struggle against yourself inwardly. And all of the pillars of Islam, one we could say a miracle is how our religion is very much intact. Okay, if you go anywhere in the world, in Muslim countries, you see people praying pretty much in the same way. People are still fasting Ramadan. Now this is not insignificance. That in an age where everyone's going in different directions, the Muslims still have a strength and are still grounded in the pillars of their religion. And we should be very appreciative of the fact that Allah Ta'ala has allowed us to maintain our religion in such a way that we can still maintain a balance in a very distracting world. Some scholars have said that this age is just a series of brilliant distractions. The age of distractibility. Okay, and everything in our religion that has been legislated and recommended is a means of centering you again. So, for example, when you're busy during your when you're busy working, and there's a lot of distractions. The prayers are a means of centering you again. You find your focus. You worship Allah Ta'ala. In Ramadan is the month we all wait for, to find that focus again in our religion. And if we merely do the outward, the formalities, we don't receive the blessings and the secrets of these great acts of worship. So we ask Allah Ta'ala to allow us to benefit from this knowledge inwardly and outwardly. May we say the Shahada and believe it wholeheartedly. May we establish the prayer and pray with our hearts focused on our Lord Subhanahu wa Ta'ala and experience the sweetness there is in worship. If you've ever seen children play FIFA, right, or watch telly, MashaAllah, you want to see khushu', right? I've got two little brothers, right? They're 14 and 15, right? When they were younger, they were watching TV. I used to go like that. They didn't blink, that. They would not blink. That's khushu'. But mashallah, when we're in prayer, what's for dinner tonight? Mashallah, that guy's stoves are not long enough. That guy's beard's a bit. Where are the hearts, Yani? Where are the hearts when they're in prayer? If we're in a cinema, mashallah, that is khushu' kamil. That's concentration. If only we could have that in our prayer. We ask Allah to grant us that khushu' in our prayer. Inshallah, we benefit from this knowledge inwardly and outwardly, and be of those who become beloved to the beloved Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask them. If not, then we'll. Wa ayakum khair. Any more questions? You sure? Allah yabarak fikum. Marhaba, Sajjad, tafadhal.
How would you calculate zakat?
So, briefly, zakat is giving 2.5% of one's wealth. Dividing something by 10 and then 4. We're going to get to that. We're going to have a whole lesson on that, and we're going to do a whole short program. I think it's probably best to wait for that. We can go into greater detail. And if there's any specific questions, we can catch up after the lesson. Inshallah. Very good question. Any more questions? Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen.